Lecture 6. Freedom comes through the nothingness of the self. The father said to him, "My son, you and I are always together. All I have is yours." Luke 15:31. Now, very few people realize the meaning of that saying. I can realize what Jesus had in his mind at that time. He saw that there could be no separation between the Father and the Son. It could not be, because the livingness of the Son was the life of the Father. It couldn't be anything else. Therefore, that life that created the body existed before time. And the life in the body is no way separated from the totality of all life in the universe, because life is not divided. The life in the body existed before it created the body for its own self-expression, and will exist also after the body is dissolved back into the substance from which it was created. The substance we know is eternal and ever-present, just the same as the life is eternal and ever-present. And the intelligence, the active principle of life, is eternal and ever-present, because all is infinite in nature. Substance is infinite in nature. It may change, but still the basic substance is infinite in nature. Science has proved that matter itself does not exist apart from energy. And energy does not exist apart from intelligence, because energy moves according to an intelligent activity. Intelligence has no direction of its own unless the consciousness, which is the directing power in life. So consciousness is directing power in man. What the consciousness is aware of, so the intelligence will act through the body. If the consciousness is aware of life itself, aware that life is, aware that God is, aware that God is infinite in nature and knows no evil, no sickness, no death, that consciousness becomes aware of it. And the body has no say in the matter, it must respond. But man has lost himself in the self. The self is bound up in craving, bound up in opposites, bound up in memories, bound up in experience, bound up in hates, bound up in antagonisms and separation. That's the self. Unless one sees the self, that they're still caught up. But one can see what the self is. Therefore, we understand the self, there is no longer any trouble. Now, life is love, and love is life. Because love is created. Love is God, and God is love. So God alone is creative. God is creative in man, and only God is creative in man. Man has no creative ability of his own, none whatsoever. God has granted him the same life, the same consciousness. Love is dynamic. It is creative without the necessity of an object. It is immortal. It is life, and life is creative, yet formless. Yet all forms are created by it and with it, and there is nowhere where it is not. So the substance is formless, but every form is existing substance, because you can't exist outside it. Life is not divided, nor is it in one and not in another. It is in all, and it is the same life. To understand creation, we must understand form, and through form we arrive at the source of creation. Because we are creation in form, and through form again experience to enable us to realize that the life in form is the same life that is formless. The life in the mortal is the same life, eternal and immortal, because it can't be anything else. Man realizes what form is, where form is created and how it comes into being. He sees the relative action in form, but he knows that there is something behind form. And the formless is the only real, both in substance and in life. That is the only creativeness there is, and it is in man too. Life and love are synonymous because love and life are one. Very few people realize it. But when we see clearly that life and love are one, we have risen out of the self into the glory of life itself, into that life that is eternal and ever present. We can be sentimental over love, but that is not love. The idea of loving everybody has very little meaning if you do not know how to love one. If you do not love one and you cannot love one, then loving everybody has very little meaning to that individual. But if you know how to love one, then you will love whole, because you will know love. And love is life, and life is love, and love is God. The moment there is complete love, there is complete communion with another. The moment love is supreme, there is complete union with one another. But if that love is not there, complete in itself, there is no communion, there is no real relationship, no real love, no real communion. Communion is love. It's a force that is beyond time. It existed before the world began. Love was the power behind all creation. Therefore, love was behind the creation of man. There is no special way to love. There is no pattern to follow. If you follow a pattern, then there is no love, because it is all in the mind. You're trying to follow a pattern. Love is something that rises up from the soul to give expression to life, to give expression to something that is beyond time. Love, then, is the secret behind all creation, and all peace, and all harmony, and all perfect communion with one another. The idea of cosmic love, the idea, mind you, of cosmic love, because most people have only an idea of cosmic love. Loving mankind while there is antagonism, animosity, and separation. This is just talk to cover up the lack of love for another. It is an easy escape for the reformer, for the moralist, the so-called wretches. But how can they love humanity if they cannot love one? For is not one the whole? In one drop of the ocean, there is all the element of the ocean in that drop. It is the same as the whole of the ocean. And when it is in the ocean, it becomes the ocean. The drop and the ocean are one. So are you and I one. The same element, same life, the same creativeness, and the same love. Now, what is it that is preventing the expression of this love that is eternal and ever-present. We will soon see. It is the self with its creed, its integrity, its separations, its different cults, its different religions, its different nationalities. Your mind is caught up and conditioned with all these things, and love, the greatest thing in the world, is lost. So you live by your idea. Your idea to you is more important than God to you. If you look into your mind, you will see that your ideal is more important than God himself. Your ideal is more important than love. Yet love is God, and God is love. But with your ideals, there can be no love, because ideals is the basis of all separation. When you know what an ideal is, then you will not quarrel with another ideal, because you will see that all in the mind, that love is eternal and ever-present, while an ideal has a beginning and an ending. Anything in the mind has a beginning and an ending. Love is eternal and ever-present, and it is love that makes men and women the children of God. To realize love life, it must be stripped of all personal whims, personal viewpoints. You must not be caught up in the opinion of what it is or what is it not. When you hate, you find yourself hating. So you say you must love those you hate. Thus you create duality, because you refuse to understand the full significance of hate. You pursue its opposite. You want to transform hate into love. You try to become loving while you refuse to understand hate. This pursuit of an ideal implies a conflict of opposites. The idea of something which you are not. So you say in your mind, you must love those you hate, you hypocrite. Don't you see how hypocritical it is? How not only hypocritical, but stupid? And you try to turn your hate into love, just as people are trying to turn peace out of war. It cannot be done. Love is God. Love is eternal and ever-present. You can't turn anything into love. Love is an eternal expression of the Father himself. You are hateful, so you want to become loving, which you are not, because if you hate one and love another, you're not a loving person. You live in duality. You're torn with two conflicts. You're torn by the conflict of duality. You hold an ideal of love, yet you're caught up in hate. When you understand what you are, actually now, your mind cannot be distracted by an ideal. Your mind must be free and not thinking in terms of your ideal. So if you have an ideal of love and you hate, you're antagonistic, you're living in conflict with yourself. You're living in duality, and there can be no love. There can only be love when you discern, clearly understand what hate, antagonism, and all these things are, and how they come about, and to see what they are, to understand them, to fall away, and then love is given true expression of itself. It is the loving thing in man and woman. It is the love of God, that perfect communion between the two souls. And not only that, it is the perfect communion when one knows how to love one. Then that one knows how to love the whole, because the whole is one, and one is the whole. But if you cannot love one, well, you may as well give up, say anything about cosmic love, because you do not know how even to love one. The pursuit of an ideal implies the conflict of opposites. The ideal is something which you are not. So you create an ideal of something you would like to be. You become an ideal of becoming something. Don't you see you're going away from reality? You are hateful and you want to become that which is your ideal. Your ideal is an example to follow, which means imitation. So your ideal is brought about not by understanding. When you understand, you no longer want an ideal. You no longer want to copy nor imitate, which is not understanding, not thinking. If you imitate, you cannot think. You're caught up in the copy. You're caught up in the imitation. You may read hundreds of books. You may cram your mind with all sorts of sayings. You may think them grand if you repeat them. Some people do. But after all, they mean nothing. And it doesn't matter if true or not, because you have no love. You may have an ideal, but you're living in the opposite. But your ideal is of no value to you until you understand what the opposite is and how it is brought about. Then, when you understand that which is hindering the expression of love, you don't have an ideal of love. You don't need an ideal, because you are love. You are. You don't have to be. You are. Therefore, becoming is an illusion. Being is truth. Now, living and loving now. In your daily life, you are full of ideals, which means you are not thinking, not understanding, but merely imitating. In your desire to become, there is imitation, and therefore there is no thinking, feeling, living. Therefore, idealists are the most stupid, thoughtless, brutal, and ruthless people. Their systems are more important than people, just the same as your ideals are more important than God. Hitler was an idealist. In yourself you can see the truth of this when you pursue an ideal. When you have an ideal of a perfect state, either the right or the left, you see how ruthless you are bound to be in achieving your ideal. The ideal is the example, is the authority, whether it's imposed by another or by yourself inwardly. Thus, there is a cessation of understanding, thinking, and so there is fear. So in both the right and the left is an idea, and each are pursuing their ideal. And when the ideals cannot be reconciled, there comes a war, destruction. This is the cause of most of our troubles in the world, is the fact that we will not discern what ideals are. We will not discern that we are imitators. As I said, people read books one after another, and they come to me and they spout the things off that they have read. You know, it's laughable. I don't say anything, but I know perfectly well how stupid it is. The fact is this: if you are an imitator, you cannot think. You may be well read, but what of it? What of the fact that you are well read? The fact that you cannot think, the fact that you're an imitator, that you accept what other people say, you accept their sayings, and yet you cannot think for yourself. But you have a fixed idea, your ideal, and something that comes along that conforms to your ideal you accept. But something that doesn't conform to your ideal you reject. You'll squirm and squeal and twist and turn, and you still remain as ignorant as you were before, because you cannot think. The lack of thinking and understanding is the cause of lack of love. The greatest ideal you can have is but a limitation. Freedom comes as your consciousness becomes wider through understanding what is hindering reality from expressing itself. What is hindering love from expressing itself. Reality expresses itself in proportion to your understanding of the false. Then the life, love, reality expresses itself in its wholeness, which is beyond the comprehension of the mind of man. You do not know what love is. You cannot put your finger on it. Just the same as you can't put your finger on consciousness. You don't know what it is. You don't know what life is. You can't put your finger on it, but you know that it is. You can experience love. You can experience the livingness that you are. You can experience the expression of love in its wholeness, in its beauty, in its perfection. You can also discern clearly in your own mind what is hindering the expression of life, love, reality. When man only creates an idea of love while still maintaining his hates, his antagonism, his greed, and the like, he lives in opposites, which is frustration. Our social structure, our education, and all our relationships are based upon imitation. Our judgment, our thoughts are based upon avoiding the understanding of what is false. All our judgments are based upon falseness, and our judgments are based upon avoiding the understanding of what is false. Look at what is happening in society, in the world, corruption, degradation, and so on. Why do we not tackle all this falsehood directly instead of saying that through an ideal we'll become marvelous? Through an ideal we become wonderful. So you pray to God, you have your ideal of God, an idea in your mind. And you pray to this idol that you create in your mind. And you think by doing so that you're going to be marvelous. How can you be marvelous and you do not know what is hindering the expression of reality? The world has been praying since doomsday, but it hasn't stopped wars, it hasn't stopped hatred, it hasn't stopped killings. All the prayers in the world will not stop until man begins to see what is hindering the expression of this love that is real, the love that is God. So everything else you create in your mind is much more important to you than God. It's much more important to you than love. Your stomachs are much more important to you than love. When you understand the false, you live dangerously, sailing the uncharted seas, being very alert and awake all the time. When you're alert and awake, you are intelligent. You are not exploited by others, nor do you want to exploit others. You cannot be exploited except you belong to the same club. Reality expresses itself through the mind that is free. The great truth is the greatest and the smallest, and the smallest and the greatest. The drop and the ocean are one and the same. The same element, I say, in the drop as in the ocean. The same element in you and me as in the totality of the whole universe. The same element in you and me as in infinity. The individualization of the consciousness is dropped in infinity, yet is not separated from infinity, because there is no division in infinity. But when the scar of individuality begins to dissolve away, there is infinity. Then you see that there is no such thing as finitude. All is an expression of infinity. All is infinity. All else is an idea. Think now. You create it in your mind. You think about it. You create an idea about it. But you do not know whether it is true or not. So when you see what the mind is made up of, what you believe to be true, your experiences, your memories, and all the things that you think are wonderful, you build up in your mind. But if you look into your mind, you will see they are just images you have created. They're in the mind, but they're not real. A reality is something that is unchangeable. But your ideas, your images change, your mind changes, over from one thing to another. The ideas you had yesterday change after tomorrow, and this goes on incessantly. But life, love, is eternal. There is no change. Love, beauty. It's the perfection in man. Jesus said these words, or similar, when he saw how relationship was holding back the expression of the Christ. He said, unless you forsake your mother, your father, your wife, your husband, your children, and even your own life, you cannot be a disciple unto me. Showing that he was seeing beyond the relationship of the relative into that which is eternal and ever present, the Christ. Showing the Christ in each and every one. That was the discipleship in each and every one. So no one could become a disciple to him unless he could see beyond that relationship into that true, perfect state of the Christ principle, which is the Spirit of God in man. That was the love that could not change, that nothing could change. The love that could not be changed by anything external to itself. It was complete. It was God in his own creation. The creativeness of God was the love of God. Now the love we see, even in the chemical activities, the attraction of the atoms, the building up of form, is all done by love. The intelligence, the life that existed before the form came into being, the same life. The consciousness that existed before the form came into being, before the brain, the nervous system was created through which you could think and act. It existed before and will exist after the body is dissolved into the substance of which it was created. It is only when you know, conceive what is in the mind, a belief in death, a belief in life, is only a belief. A belief in life and a belief in death, you live in opposites. You do not know whether one is true or whether not it is true. You don't know whether life is true or death is true. You don't know, because truth and error is mingled together in your mind. But immediately you see what it means, what the mind is, and it's only an idea, then the livingness comes into being. The livingness that is eternal, the love that is joy, that is heart, is infinite, is that perfect communion. To feel superior, you call yourself a name, because you feel the sense of inferiority. So you want to become superior. Superiority is the ideal you want to become. And so the more you want to become, the greater the conflict, which is thoughtless and stupid. When we do not understand, we feel inferior to something, do we not? We want to become because the whole of society is based on becoming something. As long as you are becoming, you must be inferior. For there is always you and the other. There is always the duality, you and the other. If you know the self to be a nobody, you will understand that becoming is an illusion. When you accept that you are nothing, it is really wonderful. Then you will know what it means to love. You are love. You are life. You are created. The reward for this understanding is beyond price and cannot be classified with any effort to become. The awareness and mental poise resulting from our understanding is permanently established in us, for nothing in heaven and earth can deprive us of our birthright. I and the Father are one, through which all is possible to the one who understands the false and dissolves it. Then the real takes its place. The real expresses itself. But how can the real express itself through the mind that is in confusion? How can reality, which is eternally ever present, ever express itself through the mind is always trying to become something? How can that which is now complete and whole express itself through a mind who is superior, trying to become something? How can that which in itself is love express itself through a mind in which there is no love? There is nothing but hatred, division, separation, antagonism. How can love express itself through a mind full of all these false things? Then what is the remedy? It is very clear, is it not? The remedy is discern the false, understand the false. It will fall away. You will see the nothingness of the self. And then when you see the nothingness of the self, then it is wonderful to be alive because you are free. And when there is nothingness of the self, then you are everything. You are everything. The Father said to him, my son, you and I are always together. All I have is you. Jesus did not want to become something, and he was undoubtedly the greatest man who ever lived. He said, of mine own self, I'm nothing. It's the Father who ever remains within me. He is performing his own deeds. Paul never expressed a greater truth than he said, let the mind be in us that was in Jesus Christ. But before we can have such a mind, we must become humble in knowing that the self is nothing. The fact that you are nobody, and nobody is anybody, you look into it clearly, is all a false thing, is all tradition. Everyone's a human being. They come into the world with nothing on. They go out the same way. And when Jesus was asked who made up the kingdom of heaven, he took the little child and he put there. Such as he make up the kingdom of heaven. There were nobody. They didn't want to come in. They were free. But as society is always wanting to become something, and so are you, because you're imitators. Everybody is imitating. Until we know that they are imitating. And we know they're imitating, what do? They just cast it aside. They know it. Very few people know that they're imitating. The fact is that you are nobody, then why not start from there and face facts directly without trying to become somebody? To face your nothingness means to be humble and to love. It means that you have no resistance to anyone. It is only when you be wanting to become somebody that you have resistance to somebody else who wants to become somebody too. So you're always in conflict with one another. So it means that you have no resistance to anyone, no barrier between you and the other. Then there is freedom. In freedom, the real is. A person who's arrogant can never find humility, however hard he may try to become humble. A person who does not recognize his nothingness, but pursues ideas, and it's a man who, without even knowing how to sow, plows and never sows. Behind all his knowledge, behind all his degrees, titles, and possessions, there is nothing. When you really acknowledge that you are nothing, you are everything, because you know that love is real. And you know that love that is real. You know that love that is eternal. You know that love where there is no separation. There is no division. There's nothing that disturbs, because you are free. You are love, only when you are free. You want to know how to love? If your love is the opposite of hate, ill will, it is no longer love. Then your love is just an ideal, an imitation, and the person who imitates cannot know love. If you are seeking how to love, you do not know love. You do not want to acknowledge that you lack love, so you have an ideal to become loving. You're deceiving yourselves and cheating others. But if you understand the whole significance of becoming, it drops away. Then the feeling of nothingness is not the end. It is the beginning of liberation. It is the beginning of freedom. It's the beginning of the expression of love that is eternal and ever present, because there is nothing to hinder it. The nothingness of the self. As Jesus saw it clearly, was the true expression of the Christ, of God in man. If your life is filled with fear, apprehension, and conflict, is because you want to become something. If you are stupid, cunning, arrogant, be aware of it. This is most essential. To acknowledge and live with what you are is a most difficult thing. But out of it will come real love, because it sweeps away all hypocrisy. Yes, you may have read many books telling you how to become. The person who really knows how stupid those books are. But they're mocked up, read, digested, and the individual who digests them begins to express them, becomes a real imitator. But they're on the wrong track. The self has become more bound, but you're still as far away as ever till you know yourself. If I could blazon this truth in letters of fire across the heavens, I would do so. So important is the realization of this truth. Trying to become as an illusion. Only being is real. Being is now. Not tomorrow or another day. Being is now. There can be no other time but now. Now is the only time. Living in the now you love. When you're loving, what happens? The past and the future is gone. There is nothing but the now. Nothing but the expression of the now. Love, and that love, the glory of God, the creativeness of man. Many who write books on truth have not found the simple truth themselves that they are nothing. And when you are nothing, you are free. If you love one completely, you will love the whole because one is the whole. You will know. You will love the whole because one is the whole. Now you want to know what will happen when you feel that you are a whole. Feeling as the whole comes later. But first, you know you are nothing. And you're not concerned with what will come after. If you are concerned with what is beyond the nothingness of the self, it shows that you are frightened of being nothing. So you can't throw away the self because you think it is your security. The self is your security, but the self is nothing. And because the self is nothing, there is no security in the self. There is only security in the supreme understanding of all these thoughts and the livingness, the creativeness of God in man. It is only realized and experienced when all the false is understood. Then the Christ of God alone is created. That is the truth that sets you free. Be nothing, then life is beautiful. Then you will be all there is. The mind that is afraid of being nothing, that is having no security, yet out of nothingness comes creativeness, because you are free. Then you begin to create. Then there is reality, God, or whatever you like to call it. To really create, there is no fear. There is no opposition, because the self is dissolved away. All craving, all desire for becoming something has passed. There is no duality. There is no opposites. There is no opposition. There is only the creativeness to nothingness of the self. The grand story of Jesus' 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness. How I can imagine him, how I can see him with his struggle with the relative world, with the understanding of what it is, with the understanding of everything that was made up in his mind, the understanding of all religion. Then, when all was completely clear to him and he knew it completely and understood it, then came blazing forth the Christ of God, the only begotten Son of the Father. lives in the Father. The Father lives in the Son. Here was the glory of the Christ revealed in man. The only way we can do it is that way too. Not to be an imitator, to follow some outside conglomeration or organization, whether it be a religious or political or anything else. Because you cannot be free through the following of any authority, no matter how learned they may be. All ideals are tomfoolery, and are of no significance to the thoughtful person. When you set them aside, you find a beautiful and indescribable love that is not yours or mine, but that which is eternal and ever present, in its own eternity. God, or whatever name you like to call it, it is that which is beyond mind, that which is alive and living. It is not an idea or a belief, but a livingness. Now, is your belief, is your ideal to you now more important than love? Is your desire to become something more important to you than God, than love? Then if it is, you are stupid. You're caught up in your beliefs, in your ideals, in the thoughts, and you will never know the truth. You may read till doomsday. You may read every book that comes into the world. You may read the Bible over and over again. And Jesus told the people, you read the scriptures and you think you have found eternal life, you make a mistake. That can only be found in yourselves and by yourself. Another's is not yours. It can never be, because you'll merely be an imitator. And all you will have is an idea, an image in the mind. It will not be a real thing. It will merely be an image. And that image will become more important to you than God himself, than love, which is God. Do you not believe that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me? The words I speak to you, oh, I do not speak of my own accord. It's the Father who remains ever in me, performing his own deeds. Benediction. O eternal love, I thought I knew thee through my ideal, while I hated those who had no ideal. In my ignorance I held ideals, yet I lived in their opposites. When I understood that I was the creator of them both, and saw myself as I really was, full of antagonisms and hate, then transformation took place. Then I knew I was nobody, and my struggle to become ceased. I really loved because I was free. When I loved completely, O adorable one, I knew I was all, and I became one with thee, O eternal love. It is entered into the sanctum of the silence.